Let's give them a great big welcome here to Bethel Baptist Church.
Well, thank you very much. I believe my microphone is working fine. All right, very good, thank you. And as Pastor Charles mentioned, please, I have an accent. I understand people in the South do have an accent as well. But if you do not hear me clearly, I encourage you to move forward, because the story that I'm going to share with you may be my story, but God is the hero in that story. And I love to share with you from that vantage point. I'd like to say thank you so much, Pastor Charles, and the leadership of the church for inviting my family not only to be with you on Wednesday last week, which was beautiful, but also to be with you today. Really appreciate the opportunity. My name is Deng, Majok Chol, and I work for Samaritan as a humanitarian protection technical advisor on the areas of refugees, internal displaced population, victims of human trafficking, and also victims of gender-based violence. After moving to the United States from Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya, I went to colleges here in the U.S., and during my time in the States, I have consulted with different organizations like the World Bank, International Finance Corporation, and have also worked with the state U.S. Congress, as well as the State Department during the war between the South and the North in the Sudan. I advocated on behalf of the marginalized and oppressed people of South Sudan, who are people of God, believers in Jesus Christ, who had been under the yoke of Khartoum Sharia system in Sudan for many decades. And so we advocated on their behalf here in the United States. But despite what my resume may indicate today, my story did not begin when I relocated to the U.S., but in a small village in South Sudan called Duk, where my wife Sarah and I come from. Though I am very grateful for the opportunity I have had, my life, or the life I live today, is only a small part or piece of a much larger story, as you can see. My life has not always included such opportunities and privileges. In fact, my childhood looked dramatically different. Today, I'd like to share with you a little bit of my story. And my children here, along with my wife, are live testimony of the sort of what God did in my life. They paint a picture of my life today, and you can contrast that with the story of me that I'm about to share with you. So at a very tender age, I learned an indispensable lesson of leadership from my father, Majok, who was the head chief of the Nyarweng Dinka of Duk. He demonstrated excellency in public services, and he presided over governance, social policy, cattle disputes, and land disputes. But as soon as I developed conscience, I quickly discerned that my parents were preparing me, perhaps, to be a future chief of that clan. So they tried to instill in me some intrinsic values of public services, hard work, honesty, humility, fairness, and justice. My primary duties were taking care for after my parents' cattle, goats, sheep, and also sometimes their farms, chasing away some of the birds that would eat the grains and other animals. But in 1987, at the age of 10, my whole world was turned upside down. The Sudanese Civil War robbed me of my childhood and tribal occupation. I was dramatically separated from my parents, siblings, cattle, sheep and the village of Deng. With the red ballooning sunset behind me, I left in the evening, facing east. And in less than 24 hours, I found myself in a jungle full of lions, tigers, and all the wild things that you can see. And later on in the lives of refugee camps and internal displaced population. So here I was in the jungle now, and for my entire fine age with my parents, I had never struggled for food or water. With over several hundred heads of cattle, goats, and sheep, as well as farms planted with grains, fruits, and vegetables, I had always had the best meal in the world. But now here I am in the jungle, and I had to make 180 turn around from being a dependent of a family who were wealthy, considering the standard there, and now becoming a survivor in the jungle. And so I had to adapt the skills that I was not taught. So bare feet, hungry and thirsty, I was faced with two choices: to try to struggle and hope to stay alive, or perish in the desert, or because of dehydration, or drown in the river, or be threaded in the lion's mouth. As the saying goes, necessity is the mother of invention. Indeed, I quickly learned to gather wild fruits, vegetables, and leaves to cook for my meals. I know at this point my children are wondering about what I'm sharing with them. I had never shared with them all this story. So at this point, my feet were getting hard or hardened because of the sandy soil in the desert. And the journey was increasingly getting heavily complicated, punctuated by a series of adversity, one adversity after another adversity. And there were a lot of other boys with me. So we were probably around 30,000 young boys, ranging from 7 years old to 15 years old, coming from different villages across South Sudan. Because the Khartoum government were bombing our villages and they were going to decimate the entire society, they were contaminating water because they knew we were a society that depended on cattle and fisheries. And if water were contaminated, then we would not survive. Those were the backdrop that caused the exodus of the boys. And I'm sure some of you may have heard of the story of the lost boys of Sudan. So not only did I have to learn to escape from wild animals, belligerent communities, the desert, but also constant aerial bombardment from the Khartoum theocratic system. In the dry desert, one incident that will never leave me occurred. We left in the morning from point A and we were going to point B. So there were a few adults who knew where we were going and they would show us where we were going to go and when to break down and when to walk. And so in the morning we were getting our little containers filled up with water to begin the long journey across the desert. So this elder came to us and said, well, there is a river at about 6 hours walking distance, and that river always has water. So there's no need for you to carry water with you. And because the journey was very dreadful, it was easier for you to carry less weight. So we poured out all the water we have in our containers. But as soon as we arrived at that river, the river was as dry as bones. And at that point it was noontime and it was a blazing sun on the tropical. And two individuals who had dehydrated enough perished on the riverbank. And this was the first death that we witnessed as young boys. Because in that society, death was something completely hidden and it was mystery to us. We could sense something went wrong when we lost someone, but we were not able to see exactly what it means to die. And so we witnessed that afternoon. And so that experience has really been with me all along, the journey, and even today. At one hand, we could not believe what we saw with our eyes and how we just lost young, precious people. On the other hand, some of us kept moving because we would become like these young boys. So that kept me going and occupied me psychologically. So we cut that long journey short. We made it to the refugee camps in Ethiopia after a 1,000-mile walk. And a lot happening there. You know, people were drowned, aerial bombardment, hunger, thirst. There were a lot that happened. But here we are now in a refugee camp facing a different adversity. Hunger became a constant phenomenon in the refugee camp. So amid all of these odds in the refugee camp, I was introduced to two life-changing events for me. One, I met Jesus under a tree in this refugee camp, under whose shade I was baptized a year later. And the second event that happened to me was I was introduced to formal education for the first time. I was, at that point, completely illiterate in both the Dinka and in English. Up until the age of 14, I could not read. So my first classroom in Ethiopia was in the shifting shade of moving branches of a tree dangled by the wind. The sandy soil was my notebook. My index finger was my pencils. And my bare feet were my erasers. Little did I know there was a revolutionary movement going on in Ethiopia to change the Ethiopian communist regimes, and that I would become a victim of it when it came to full effect in 1991. So I had to flee for the second time on foot now with a handmade backpack back to Sudan. And guess what happened when we arrived in Sudan? The Khartoum government could not bomb us when we were in Ethiopia. But as soon as the land that we were back now to Sudan, in Sudan territory, that aerial bombardment revisited us. And it was for all of the whole year when we were between Sudan and Kenya. As the saying goes, when it rains, it pours. On the one hand, the Ethiopian rebels were firing at us out of their country, and on the other hand, the nature weighed in with too much rain, pouring, creating mud, and it was very difficult to really run from the gunfire in a muddy soil. You know, walking in a sticky mud is a kind of workout you want to avoid if you can. Amid these chaos, I struggled to teach myself English from the Bible. And so I had two Bibles. One was the Dinka New Testament, my vernacular language, and the other Bible was the English New Testament. So the only way I could teach myself English, there were no dictionaries, was to read verses in each of the languages, line by line, words by word, paragraph by paragraph. And I was able to distinguish some of the vocabularies in English. And I had a small notebook where I have vocabularies in English listed here, and then their meaning in Dinka listed here. And so that book, some of the lost boy called it a dictionary. And I carried with me during this journey from Ethiopia across Sudan before we came to Kenya. So a year in the jungle in Sudan felt like a century. Almost all of it is spent dodging aerial bombardment, wild animals, and feeding off the leaves of trees and so forth. But with some NGOs' help, we made it to Kenya in 1992, and we arrived at a place called Kakuma refugee camp It was just a wild place with trees and dust, and with the wind blowing and blowing dust right into your eye. And they said this is going to be the refugee camps. I was one of the first arrivals in this camp, and I know vividly when I arrived around 11 a.m. with the dust blowing and you could not see into your nose, eyes, and mouth. That was Kakuma. But in this dusty Kakuma, after about a decade in the camp, I completed my high school outside the camp with the help of some NGO, Jesuit refugee services, who were sponsoring kids who were working hard to a Kenyan boarding school, and then I came back to the camp and was teaching in high school within the camp. You know, in a dramatic turn of event, amazing grace fell on me right in the dust of Kakuma. Not only did I have such absolutely unbelievable, unforeseen opportunity to leave the camp, but I also had two choices: whether I would go to Canada with World University Services of Canada, or to come to the U.S. with the U.S. Refugees Program. So I considered this a miracle, indeed, because at that point, going to college was a dream that could not be attained. Too expensive. You could not get outside the camp. High school, I had settled with my high school certificate and was teaching, and that was it. But to have the choices of going to Canada or to the United States was just something that blew my mind. So in 2001, my world changed again. I was now in Arizona, Phoenix, and I came with only a backpack and immigration documents. And so, by the way, a transition from Kakuma refugee camp in northern Kenya to Arizona was the only smooth one from a climatic viewpoint. Both of them are very hot. And so it was an easy transition, like those who went to Minnesota or North Dakota or somewhere in Canada. So I consider the whole of my exiles really a work of God, a miracle. Today, according to the UNHCR, there are 65.3 million individuals who are displaced. 65.3 million individuals displaced. And there are 21 million refugees around the world, half of whom are under the age of 18. There are also 10 million individuals that have no country, that they call their own country. They don't have a state, and they have no access to basic services. And I was supposed to be one of these individuals with Sarah together. And Sarah has her own story in this story as well, as a young girl who left with her parents when she was barely born, and traveled some of the journey on her parents' shoulders. So we were together. We didn't know each other at the time, but we were together in the same footprint, working. And so she and I would have been part of this group. There's something called SAM, severe acute malnutrition. It's something that the children face a lot. Children in refugee camps, in displaced camps. And there are over 16 million children around the world under the age of 5 that are affected by this severe acute malnutrition. Education data among the refugees is so low. Only 26 people attended, 26% of the 61 million attended school last year. So I like to come now to the biblical literature or verses that I feel, in retrospect, speak into the life that God has blessed me and served. Because the issues that I have addressed here are too real for millions of individuals, day in and day out. I was one of them. Yet by the grace of God, I was granted freedom from the oppression of poverty and war. God gave me the opportunity to prevail. In Luke 12:48, King James Version will say, "For unto whomsoever much is given of him shall be much required. And to whom men have committed much, of him they will ask the more." This is my desire, to be used by God to help those in need who cannot help themselves, in gratitude for how He has richly blessed me. There is also a story in the book of Luke 10 of a simple Samaritan man who is not honored with much credential. We do not know his education or his profession. We do not even know his own family, and we don't even know his own name. We are told only of his good deeds, and because of his character and his deep concern for one person in need, his story is elevated to a place of timelessness and eternal relevance to the kingdom of God. We remember his generosity, both with his time and his money. We remember the swiftness with which he acted. We remember his compassion. That is the story of the Good Samaritan. As I look back at my childhood and the atrocities of war, I do not remember every name and face of those who helped me. I do not remember their title or social status. I do remember the lasting impact their good deeds made on me. I remember their overflowing generosity. I remember their sense of urgency. And I remember their great compassion. And this is what I want to be remembered for if God desires to use me so. Amen. God has a plan for each one of us. Children who are sitting here, parents, or each one of us, God has a plan. And we know that in Bibles, that God had planned for the people in the biblical times. In the book of Genesis 45, verses 5, Joseph said, because God had a plan for Joseph, I am your brother, Joseph. This is after he found his brother after the famine. He was sold to Egypt and all of that. But then they met with his brother's man who went to Egypt, and he was made the principal of that place. I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Now, do not be grieved or angry with yourself, because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. So when I look back at the atrocities of what happened to me today, I realized that God had a plan for me. And I got to be gracious, despite a lot of things that happened to me. To be separated from family at the age of 10, only to meet them later, after 20 years. And only met my father in coffin in Kenya, and had to fly his body with my wife to the village to be buried. I looked at my life in retrospect. I realized that God has a bigger plan for me, and that whoever created atrocities along the way are not people to take grievances against, but that this was a bigger vision of God. And while my parents wanted me perhaps to be a chief in Duke, God had a different plan for me. Today, I have been absolutely blessed by the grace of God with 2 or 4 important things. The relationship with Jesus and my family, as you have seen them, and then my knowledge or exposure around the world. And I am here now speaking to you in Boone or Vilas, North Carolina. It's amazing. Like God used Joseph, God used me during my time in the U.S. to relocate my siblings from the village of Duke to Nairobi. Sarah and I have dedicated ourselves to our siblings, and back home we tend to have large families. I also understand here in the southern part of the country, you also have large family too. So I have 21 siblings myself. And so Sarah and I have relocated them, and God is using us. 3 of them have graduated from college. Our first female in the family, our sister, is in university right now in Kenya. And we thank God for that. And also, God has used us with Sarah to help other families that are not our immediate family. As you know, Sudan is a country that has been in war for a lot of decades. I mean, I met a brother here, David, working for International, Compassion International. He knows too well that the people of Democratic Congo, Sudan, right now it is spilling over Somalia. The whole region now is affected. And Sudan have faced a lot of issues. And so we have been helping around 68 families. Some of them extended family, most of them are widows with children, 5, 3. And because of the economy in South Sudan, like the Venezuelan, the inflation is too high, the economy is unbearable, income have not been adjusted, the whole economy depends on one oil, only one resource is oil. And when the oil prices go down and the world stops flowing, the whole economy collapses. So God has used us to help these 68 families with some of our American friends that we have found in Arizona, that we have found in Maryland, and they have worked along with us. So I like to say, in conclusion, that, as a child long deprived of my parent life, forced to walk over 1,000 miles across Africa, and illiterate until the age of 14, today I firmly believe that no boy or girl should have to experience the childhood Sarah and I did. No story should begin where ours begin. A child should not be thrust into a civil war to learn about the world around her or the character of the people, nor call a cluster of trees refuge, or an index finger in the dirt school pencil, or green leaves of the jungle daily meals. Yet I am so thankful to God. My experience have given birth to my spiritual growth and have contributed significantly to my personal commitment to a better world. A world where both boys and girls, the old and the young, the material poor and the material rich, with state or stateless, know a level of personal dignity, and have mutual respect for common humanity in each one of us, because we are inherently valuable, made in the image of God. And today, for me to have gone to some of the colleges here in the state, George Washington University, Arizona, Harvard, this is all by the grace of God. This is all by the grace of God. And it is my humble beginning that motivates me to stand up here for the disadvantaged around the world, be it immediate family, extended family, in the work I do today. And so I pray that God will continue to use each one of us because He has a purpose for all of us. And today I appreciate your invitation, and I'd like to say, may God bless all of you. Amen.